right, again today we're working on boundaries, and my name is Rickey. I'm the Service Forester with ODNR Division of Forestry, and we're in the southeastern woods area of Ohio. This particular boundary is not in a woodland situation, but it's a good example of how to do things and how not to do things. And if you look over to my right side, you'll see 3 dots of paint in blue facing what appears to be the corner. And this is a nice corner fence pole, and it seems like it would be the boundary. Unfortunately, what happened here was there was a pin here, a survey pin with a cap on it with a survey name and a number on it. That was removed and the post was put in. This seems like an acceptable way to do this, but the only problem is it has to be a licensed surveyor to remove that pin and to replace something in place of it, and it also has to be worded in a deed and then filed at the courthouse to become an official record. So unless this post is reworded and mentioned in a deed for either property, it really doesn't replace the pin itself. And unfortunately, as we've looked around today, at the bottom of this post, the pin is gone. So again, now when you're talking about do you need a surveyor, this is one of the situations that to do this correctly and to put it back, you definitely need a surveyor. And again, we encourage you to use a professional land surveyor organization surveyor here in Ohio to get help with that. And when they do a survey for you, always follow up and make sure that in your agreement with getting the survey done with any surveyor that you guys talk about, and make sure that the information that they prepare for you in the survey is filed at the courthouse and used in a deed description to make it a legal binding document at the courthouse. We're working on boundary marking, and we're doing a little refresh marking today of a boundary that's already been marked, and paint's faded out a bit, so we're going to keep on top of our maintenance, and we're going to apply our new blue paint over top of the old blue paint. And I'm going to show you a little bit of how to do that, and then make sure you understand the marking system of 3 dots for a corner and so forth, and witness trees. And we're going to do that here at this corner. This thing is a stake that we've drove in beside the actual pin. The actual survey pin is right here with an orange cap to it. It has our survey number on it and a name on it for the surveyor, so we know exactly where we're at. This is the old fence post. It's laying here with some wire around it and an old brace across there, and that has fallen out of that general area here. So what we're going to do is, we've got all of our old clothes on now. We don't look too pretty, but we're about function, not fashion for this. So I got my old 4-inch brush. It's pretty rough looking. I've stirred this paint up good. It's good and thick boundary paint here, and it's quite thick. So this is what you're looking for, is a good quality oil-based paint. You can get all kinds of different colors. It's up to you. Just again, be mindful of what color you use and what signal you're sending, so that you're not telling people it's public property or something like that in your area. So again, if like in southeastern Ohio, state land uses yellow. Wayne National Forest traditionally used to use red. So you know, a blue or something is good. And we will go with the universal marking system here on this. So we're going to highlight things again. So we're going to dig this out, make sure we can see that pin good. And I'm going to put some ribbon around it one more time. So we're going to do that before we paint. And we will highlight everything that we can for evidence. So we'll get this down in here and tie it off, and then we'll tie it up to the stake next. And again, you want to be painting your boundaries about every 3 to 5 years, depending on how much sunlight everything gets. So we're just going to run this up here, tie this off, and make it nice and visible for everybody to find, make it simple. And again, if you want to do something that adds value to your property, marking your boundaries is certainly one of the things that will do that. This particular boundary marker is at a corner, a 4-way corner. So I'm going to put 3 spots of paint all the way around this post 3 times, and then I'm going to put 3 spots of paint on this tree facing the pin, and I'm going to do the same thing on this tree facing this pin. And I'll probably go over and do one more here because I'm trying to dial everybody in to that pin. Then we'll worry about doing the trees on the boundary lines themselves separately. Okay, so let's go ahead and start putting some paint on here. And you want to put it on nice and thick, and this is the time of year to do it before the leaves come out, so you can see from one to the next. But I want you to always paint boundaries thinking about the summertime. when the leaves come out real good, you're not going to be able to see very far compared to today. And as you can see behind me, we're at the end of the window to do this real well before the leaves take off on us on all the oaks and the maples that are behind me. Some areas of the state are already leafing out pretty good today. So just depends on what you've got growing, especially if you have the invasive species like bush honeysuckle. They will be pretty green already and starting to get hard to see what you're doing. So we're going to get a little bit sloppy because the paint can, or the paint brush, I'm sorry, is a little bit stiff yet, but it will soften up. The more paint we get into it, it'll again absorb that up and we'll be able to use it just fine all the rest of the day. So we've got our 3 spots of paint just about done on our stake. And this is, again, just designed to draw people into the actual boundary marker, which is down here in the ground. It's not this post, it's this pin. Okay, so that's the pin. And then we're going to walk over here, and we talk about blazing a trail in the old days of history. That was before they had a lot of paint. So they would mark trees by blazing them. And you can see here is what we refer to as a cat face. It's healed over where I've blazed it in the past. That's why I've got the safety glasses on. I'm going to chop this off and scar this tree up. And everybody usually looks at me and says, why are you scarring that tree? You don't want to hurt the tree. The tree will heal this over, especially this time of year, before the funguses get too awfully active. It will sap over the wounds. But we're also about to put a good oil-based paint on it, which will keep insects out of it that bring you insects and disease all go hand in hand with trees. So once we blaze this, even if the paint wears off, somebody with some experience at looking at the trees are going to see these scars. And that's where they used to use the blazing term in the old days. Blazing a trail, they would mark it so they didn't have paint available. So the scars on the trees would work in place of paint. So we use a system of both, paint and blazes. So as long as the tree is here, those scars will be on it and we'll always be able to see that. All right. So this little tree here, again, these are just witness trees to the pin. This one's so small, I'm not even going to blaze it. I'm just going to put the paint right on it, freshen it up real good, and it should be good to go. And this is a universal system for marking boundaries. The 3 spots means a corner. So most surveyors and others that are out and about doing things out here like this, foresters, etc., this is something they are used to seeing and expecting. So if they're walking through the woods and they start seeing 3 dots of paint, they know there's a corner here somewhere, and it starts dialing them into where it's at. So I only have one more little tree to go over here to mark. And that one is going to be the first time we mark it. So we're just going to put our 3 dots of paint facing the pin. Nothing major. And again, this has nothing to do with the direction of the boundary line. Just simply marking where the pin is. And the pins are critical. And yep, I'm spilling a little bit of paint right now. It's not absorbed into my brush very well, but we're getting there. And that should give us 3 trees all painted facing to the pin, which starts our triangulation process to end to one central point. So as you can see behind me, we have a large white oak tree, and this is a prime example of why you paint your boundaries and communicate with your neighbors. Unfortunately, the neighbor to the back side of the property was having a timber harvest done, and the logging crew came up and they cut the smile cut, as we call it, out of the tree. And you can clearly see the tree is now ruined from a timber standpoint, but it is still witnessing the boundary, which is valuable in this case. But the main thing is, why is it important to have your boundaries painted if there is a timber situation like this and say some trees get cut on the other side of the boundary? What you're doing is establishing the intent. If someone crosses the boundary knowingly and cuts your trees, you have a much better leg to stand on to try to get something resolved out of it through law. If you have no boundary markings and they can't honestly know that they crossed onto your property, that's a much tougher challenge. And the burden of proof is all on you. So we always encourage you from a protection standpoint for yourself and others to paint your boundaries. And this way you eliminate trespass in the way of timber theft or hunting or any other trespass, mushroom hunting, you name it. Four-wheeler riding these days, UTVs, everything. Paint your boundaries and make it well known as what's yours. This will forever last here as a damage to this tree. I don't know how long the tree will stand here, but it is quite a large white oak and we'll use it as the boundary witness as long as we can.